Hello, Norm.
All
Hey,
right,
Tom.
welcome to our special New York Giant Preservation Society meeting for tonight, July 1st, as we honor and remember the greatest player to ever suit up in a uniform. And we once again go from the New York Giants Preservation Society to the Willie Mays Preservation Society. Before we get started, I just want to catch you up on a few things. We will have no meeting this Thursday. It is the 4th of July. We will reconvene on 7-Eleven Day. Make sure you get your free Slurpee, of course, and we'll have Lou Friedman, who's going to be talking about Hoyt Wilhelm. What else did I want to say? I took the YouTube page and I put another section in it. It's all things on the New York Giants that I could find. A lot of great stuff in there. It is non-Zoom recordings or non-recordings that our group has been on. So you might want to check it out. I added like 25 videos, and they're all really, really good and interesting. On the 8th of July at Oracle Park, there's going to be a Willie Mays celebration of life. And I've decided that I'm going to go to represent the group. So I will be heading out to San Francisco and
Good.
being representing the group, just like I just said. So
You'll be here next week?
I will be there next Sunday. I am flying out to San Francisco.
Okay.
Sunday or Monday?
Hope to see you there, Tom.
Okay.
Paul Ellis Graham. Paul, did you want to just say something before we get started?
Well, I guess this is just a follow-up from what we had talked about earlier when we had the 2/4/24 event. But what I was thinking or hoping to do, if possible, was to ask people to write down, in this case, literally write it down or email, your reason why Willie means to you. And then, I would be willing to try to compile them. And then, Gary, you could put them in whatever order you wanted them to, if that's something you still want to do. That was my hope. The other option, of course, is if we have the recording, is once the recording is done, is to save it and then go through it and try to, pick up and listen to different people speak and write down what they say. That's harder to do, of course, than if they did it sent it in, but maybe that's what I was thinking of doing. Then we could put it together in some format like we discussed, perhaps a book, The Bridge That Willie Built Between New York and San Francisco.
Thanks, Paul. Paul, I brought this up and we got everybody seems to be gung-ho about it. We got like one article sent, so that's all dependent on what you guys and gals want to do. So we shall see. Tonight, unlike we've had two Mays tributes, one on 2/4/24, and that was we were reminiscing about Willie Mays, meeting him, seeing him play, and then on his birthday, everybody here sent out their birthday greetings to Willie. Tonight, instead of rehashing the same things, I think it would be appropriate if we just talk a little bit, each one of us or whoever wants to join us and speak. Talk about what Willie Mays either means to you or what he meant to you. We will go in order of the hands up. Since I have the mic, I will go first. We're going to go Norm and then Hindi is next. And whoever does not know how to raise your hand, there is a button that says reactions on the bottom with a yellow hand. If you cannot navigate that, please let me know and I will add you to the list of people who are speaking. I'll start it off. This is going to be a little rough night for some of us. When I think of Willie Mays, what he means to me, he always puts a smile on my face because what he means to me is he's a link to my childhood and to my father. I always wanted to be like my father. My father liked the New York Giants, and then the San Francisco Giants, but mostly Willie Mays. And I got to see Willie Mays play firsthand, his first game as a Met. I saw a couple of Giant games. But that link between father and son was made possible by Willie Mays. And that link that my father and I established later allowed this group to flourish. Because everything we've done as a group, so much of it has come from our love affair with the greatest player who ever played. Countless Zooms we've had dedicated to Willie Mays, raising money for Willie Mays. So as a child, I admired Willie Mays through my dad. And as an adult, I admire him through what I've seen and through my heart. And he will never, ever be forgotten. He's the greatest player who ever played and who ever will play. Norm Coleman.
When Gary suggested this day for us to speak about what Willie Mays means to us, I was bewildered. The premise being, talk about your feelings about Willie rather than recall all the special moments Willie gave us on and away from the field. How do I talk about Willie, about what he means to me, without describing the first time I was aware of him on the baseball field in the spring of 1962? As an educator, I easily spoke at every graduation held by our school. I've given eulogies for family and friends with the hope my words were moving while laced with humor. The thing is, I knew the people I was speaking about intimately, and they knew me. We had shared experiences, and I loved them. I do not pretend to have shared experiences with Willie Mays. I met him a few times, but I loved him from afar. We had a couple of short conversations, which meant the world to me, and most likely were soon forgotten by Willie. Yes, his performance was a tremendous factor in why I loved him. Willie was the epitome of how I should behave, based on my father's words of advice. If you're going to do something, do it right. No one played baseball more right than Willie. Willie might have been an 8-tool player, or he was a 1-tool player. The 1-tool being he was the best at everything he did on the field, and he played with all of his heart and with great joy. Willie was the most entertaining and enthralling player I've ever seen. Willie's personality off the field was as mesmerizing as his personality on the field. I did not know Willie, yet I found myself grieving as if Willie had been one of my best friends or one of my favorite uncles. What does Willie mean to me? Immediately upon learning of Willie's passing, I began receiving numerous texts, email, and phone calls, all with the same theme. I heard about Willie, and I immediately thought of you. One of the messages came from the woman who recently did the news story about me. She included a link to a poem she wrote about Willie, which was also shown on the news. The woman knew absolutely nothing about baseball until she met me. Her comment was, I wrote this poem.
It's all right, Norm. Gather yourself.
In his honor. And my interview with you certainly inspired it. All of the items in my backdrop are on display in my condo. Represent about half of the Willie items I have on display. There are posters, autographs, baseball cards, statues, bobbleheads, books, cups, plates, a Mays model baseball glove, a Mays Little League bat, a Willie Mays Wheaties box, and photos, including one where I'm making Willie laugh. What does Willie mean to me? My email handle is Willie Mays. The last 4 digits of my landline spell Mays. I'm so blessed to have all of these reminders about how much Willie means to me. I have memories of Willie playing up close and in person at the ballpark starting in 1962. I have special memories of Willie off the field. Did not take long for people in my inner circle to figure out how much Willie means to me. Everyone I know since 1962 knows exactly what Willie means to me. It seems that when it comes to Willie, I took my father's advice. I did something and I did it right. Willie was one of my best friends, and he was one of my favorite uncles. He just did not know it. Oh, and Willie walked, tripled, and hit a home run in the 8th to tie the game, and home run in the 10th to win the game on that warm spring day in 1962. Thank you, Gary.
Norm, that was fabulous, Norm. Mrs. Mays, you are up, indeed.
Thank you very much. Gary, you and your father had that bond. I had that bond with my brother. He made me a Giants fan, and of course, I'm older than all of you. So I remember Willie when he first came up in 1951 and 1954, and I went to see him in person in 62. But every time I saw him at Cooperstown, you know that he called me the button lady, and I don't know if you can see this, but here's 2 different pictures of me with Willie. I also have an autographed, this, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah. Very nice.
And that says to Hindi, and he was always teasing me, and absolutely the greatest player and my favorite person. So thank you for calling me Mrs. Mays. I appreciate that.
That will always be your name. Don't worry. Mr. Paul, you're up.
Well, it's so hard to know really where to begin. Like Gary, you know, being a Giants fan and living on the East Coast when we never saw I was too young to see the New York Giants play. You know, so Willie, the love affair with Willie really began just watching him whenever you got a chance to, whenever he came to Shea Stadium, for example. Never came to Yankee Stadium except in 1962, which kind of, you know, initiated my contact with him, you know, based on TV. You know, it's kind of like having a favorite pen pal that you want to talk to. You can't talk to him necessarily, but you can see and you can enjoy. And that really was so important to me. It created a bond. My father was a diehard Red Sox fan, but he knew how much I love Willie Mays. So he would always tell me the scores about the Giants and how Willie did. And so that was a forever bond that we had together. And Willie was part of that bond. And so I think that's something I'll always be grateful for. I had a wonderful friend and colleague by the name of Tom Dames, who grew up in Fort Lee, New Jersey, who became a New York Giants fan, who was heartbroken when the Giants left. And, you know, he became a Yankee fan, but he loved Willie. He still did. And when he was part of the New York Giants group initially to say, hey, Willie is going to be here, I said, I've got to go see him. I was so overwhelmed in 2010 by just seeing him. I started to cry and just thanked him for what he meant. And what he means, of course, is a guy who's always on his game, a guy who's always thinking, a guy who interacts with the fans, somebody who's outgoing. We now know how much he really cared about others, especially about children who didn't have the opportunity. So we have the chance as a Giants group to keep Willie's legacy going forward and do for kids what Willie did for all of us in our hearts. And so with those memories, you know, Willie's solid with us and solid with me. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Paul. Before I go any further, we recently had the May, the month of May, that will continue onward. So just in case that interests you. And some of you, again, do not know how to raise your hand with the yellow hand. If you do not know how to do this and want to speak, please raise your hand now and I will call on you in order. Okay, I got Tom O'Doul, and I got Jerry, and I got the other Tom, and I got Mr. Swig, and I got Dennis. All right.
Gary,
Yes.
it's John Patrici.
Hey, John, how are you?
Okay, I'm just, I don't know if I did this right, okay? But I could see you.
On the bottom, John, there's a video. If you click on it, your picture should show up. If not, I will call on you when the time comes. Okay. Right now, we're going to Bill Klink. Bill, you're up.
Gary, I asked permission of this when you were off screen, so no one objected then, so I'll do it now. But it actually is a follow-up on what Paul had talked about last week, and that was, we talked about that article that talked about the game and Mays in the second game of the doubleheader. I sure remember when Willie hit the home run that sent them into the playoffs in 1962. I was there with my dad, another dad remembrance. But if, with your permission, I'm gonna take about 3 minutes and read something that will not only give us information about Willie in that game, we all know about the triple play, but there is a Mays catch that has not necessarily been detailed, but Jimmy McGee, the sports writer for the News Call Bulletin, did talk about that.
Bill, Bill, I don't mind if you read it, but I really would rather stick on what he meant to you.
All right.
If you want to read it quickly, go ahead. But the essence of the evening is not about great catches and events other than what he meant. If you want to read it, please do it quickly and then get on to what you want to say about it.
I'll pass on that with the number of people that are here. I do appreciate it, but I'll speak another time.
No, I'd like it. Bill, talk.
Okay. I won't, there's a preface really to this story, but duration alone would have made the second game historic, but it was one of the most brilliantly played games of the season. Spectacular defense, great pitching. One settled into a 6-6 tie, accounted by for its length. It wasn't easy to get a base hit. Orlando Cepeda found that out in the 14th inning when Jesus Alou opened with a single, followed by Willie Mays, who drew a walk. Cepeda lined a smash slightly to the left of second with the crack of the bat. Alou broke for third, convinced he was going to score the tie-breaking run. But Roy McMillan, the Mets shortstop, made a great leap, held the ball, stepped on second, doubled Alou, threw to Cranepool to complete the double play. The veteran McMillan also saved the Mets earlier. In the 12th inning, Cepeda led off the double. Catcher Haller followed with a ground smash to second. The Giants apparently were going to break the tie, but McMillan, with tremendous effort, cut the ball off on its way to center and beat the scrambling Cepeda back to the bag to get him out. The Giants, Jim Davenport, made a couple of game savers. Mays made one of the great catches of his career, sequenced with great retrieves. Had Willie succeeded, the game would have ended in 9 innings and never been thought of again. The Mets tied the score in the 7th when outfielder Joe Christopher had a 3-run homer off Bowen, the Giants' starting pitcher. The ball sailed over the 8-foot fence in left center, but as it did, Mays, with a perfectly timed leap, got his glove not only over the fence, but behind it and on the ball. When he brought the ball down, his hand hit the top of the fence, the ball jarred out of his glove, and Christopher got the homer that made it 6-6. That was at 5:35. The Giants made the winning run almost 6 hours later. Willie almost stopped that game from being in overtime, but that's one of those Mays catches that wasn't a catch. But maybe one of you who was at the game, I only listened to it on the radio, can reveal something more about that almost catch off of Joe Christopher.
Thank you, Bill. Barry Cutler, you're up.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I think I might have told part of this story, but then I have something to add to it at 2/4/24. But I was a kid that grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. My father was from New York, so when I started following sports, it was about 1947. That was the year the Giants, I think, set a record at that time for the most home runs. Willie wasn't there yet. But for the next few years, right into 1950, 51, I said to my father, hey, Dad, how come our teams never win? We're the Giants football, the Knicks, the Rangers. They never win. And by now I'm getting close to my teens. And in 1951, I had my bar mitzvah. And son of a gun, within about 2 months of my bar mitzvah, along came Willie Mays. And to this day, he is not only the greatest bar mitzvah gift a boy could ever get, but he'll be my forever bar mitzvah gift. Now, I never really met Willie except in the breakfast we had, and after the 2012, it was in January 2013 breakfast that the Giants threw for us. And I went to all three breakfasts. And along with whoever it was that said it before, I was one of those 70-something guys that stood up crying and cheering at the same time when Willie came into the room. But Willie has always had such a great presence for me. When I saw him with the basket catch, and Harvey was talking about it before, Harvey, you never made the basket catch because you never had a basket like this. Because in 1952, when I graduated from junior high school, and of course, Willie wasn't there then, my parents said, what do you want for graduation? I said, oh, I know a place out in Milford, Connecticut, great sports place. They took me there, and I bought this glove. It was about $20 at the time. God knows how much it would be now. But this has stayed with me all these years. And this is always a reminder of Willie, because I learned to catch a ball starting with the basket catch. But this particular glove made me such a much better player. And every time I caught a ball, I was an infielder. But I played not really great, but pretty good sandlot. And then softball until I was about 30, pretty good levels. I played almost every position on the field with this glove, including catcher, and I used to end up with a raw meat hand. But I always thought of Willie whenever I caught the ball, and I really became a much better player simply for his inspiration. And it was really just so special for me. Well, I took a picture along with many of you in that 2013 breakfast when they were giving us copies of Willie's autobiography. And I had already bought the book, and I remember going up, and the representative from the Giants was there. I said, gee, I don't think I need a book. I have my own, and I've already been reading it, and it's tabbed and everything. He said, oh, thank God. So many extra people showed up. We need every book we got. And when Willie signed it, I asked him, I shook hands with him, and I told him what I thought about him as being so special to me, even though he doesn't know me, but it's such an important part of my life. And it was just absolutely so special. All these years later, at the time, he was 7 years older than me. And right now, to his passing, I'm still 7 years younger. But somehow I feel like we're more peers, because 7 years when you're in your late 80s and 90s isn't such a big deal anymore. And you're lucky to still be alive. Well, when he passed, well, a week ago Tuesday, be 2 weeks tomorrow, I couldn't believe all the people that I know that were calling me as if they were making a call for a member of my family. My children, my son-in-law, friends from all over the country, they were calling me like I was family. But that's how much Willie always meant to me in my life. And the one good thing about tonight, not only having this opportunity, Gary, to express our feelings, that means so much to my wife, is that after tonight, she gets the living room back, because my living room is full of all kinds of things that I have of and about Willie Mays that go all the way back to this glove in 1952. And I've got, you name it, and I've got it all over the living room. And she's so happy to get the living room back tomorrow. She's out right now. And again, I thank you, and I thank you for the club. I thank you for starting the club. And even though I don't attend regularly, I read everything you send, and I just love being part of this. Thank you so much.
Very, very, very kind words. Great stories too. Mr. Weinberg, you are up.
I don't know if I should preface this, but I wrote it out because the assignment from Professor Mintz was essentially to think about and be able to articulate what Willie Mays meant to me and what the effect that Willie Mays had on my existence. So bear with me, and if you think it's too long, Gary, mute me. I grew up in a New York City neighborhood in the northeast part of the Bronx where at a local Woolworths, a 5 and 10 cent store, you could buy a gray Confederate Army battle hat. Or you could also purchase a blue cap of the Union Army and a full complement of toy soldiers to reenact the battle. But make no mistake, the Confederate Army battle cap was a bestseller. Johnny Reb was lionized. And perhaps that was understandable because we were taught in the local public school, PS 12, that covered grades kindergarten through the 6th grade, that it was not a civil war, but rather it was actually the war between the states, and that the South was only fighting to preserve an agrarian economy based on cotton. Slavery was barely mentioned, if at all. It was certainly not taught as the abomination it was. It was the Northeast Bronx, 1954. I would turn 9 in September of that year, but my real education began as an 8-year-old on July 10th, 1954. I'll celebrate that 70th anniversary next week. On July 10, 1954, Willie Mays started me on my real education, which brought out inherent, initially childlike beliefs premised on a simple idea. How could anyone dislike Willie Mays? Why would anyone dislike Willie Mays? Why would anybody discriminate against Willie Mays? Oh, I know, and well knew then, that there were Dodgers fans and Yankees fans and 13 other teams in the major leagues in those days, but that's not what I meant. The neighborhood enclave in which I lived the first some 20 years of my life before Helen and I married was predominantly white, Irish, Italian, and a few Jews. There was one family of color in the 30-family apartment building in which we lived. I knew Bobby was a good punchball player and his older brother Cyril was a good stickball player, and that's all that mattered to me. I'm not sure I processed the fact that they were light-skinned Negroes. But when I was 8 years and 10 months old, my dad, a glazier, took my brother and me to the Polo Grounds. Again, July 10th, 54. 1954.
I just did a little while ago.
1954.
Who's ever talking,
know.
please shut off
Didn't
your
ring.
phone.
Or maybe I was taking your son to the softball match.
He parked his station wagon. My dad parked his station wagon, which he used to haul his work stuff, on the Bronx side of the Harlem River, and we walked over the McCombs Dam Bridge to the Polo Grounds. I recall descending a very high, steep staircase and seeing numerous black men, I guess they were African Americans, Negroes, queuing up in a plaza-like area to purchase general admission tickets. Giants versus the Pirates. We did the same thing and sat in the lower right field grandstands, just inside the fair side of the.
Harvey, hold on a second.
Yeah, Harvey, you're going to.
Whoever has talking to their wife, please mute yourself. You're being tremendously rude. I know you're not doing it on purpose, but you have to obey by the rules here. I apologize, Harvey.
You don't have to apologize. It happens. Don't worry, guys. I'm on your side. He's the teacher. I was always on the other side of the teacher, you know. where was I? We did the same thing and sat in the lower right field grandstand just on the fair side of the right field foul pole with an unobstructed view of Willie in center field. This section was mostly populated by black folks, black men. I didn't see any women at all. At the time, that meant nothing to me. The Negroes, the label African American had not yet been coined, were uproariously and happily enthusiastic about Willie. Over the years, I have revisited in my mind's eye what I saw and heard, and what I heard were young men, perhaps in their 20s, Southern men, who probably were familiar with the Negro Leagues and were citizens of New York City, probably Harlem, and fans of Willie Mays. I certainly did not comprehend that day 70 years ago, but they probably idolized and hero worshiped Willie. When Willie was on third base that game, one man several rows in front of us exhorted, "Steal home, Willie, steal home." I'm trying to recreate what he said. He didn't call him Willie. He called him Willie with a Southern accent. I still remember how his accent called out. I think Willie did steal home, and so did my dad, who was keeping score. And the young man leaped and confirmed, I told him. He dropped the D. It matters not that decades later I found out that the official score had declared it E1. I had witnessed the deeply emotional effect Willie Mays had on Black Americans who were cheering in a focused manner. It was Willie Mays, not so much the Giants, for whom they were cheering. And both what I observed Willie do on the field and what I heard in the stands deeply affected me, even if I did not realize it immediately. What Willie did that day was captured my heart and my mind. Hey, I was only 9, but he had gotten it. Before I was not yet 9. I was 8 years and 10 months. Before the Giants and Dodgers moved, I was part of the Willie Mickey Duke debating group, or at least what we argued on Rowland Street, Bronx 61, New York. No zip codes yet. I was a Willie Mays advocate, not because of my dad, not because of my adopted team, the Giants, but because in my childish way, I discerned that what Willie did as a ball player was beyond my human abilities. Sure, he hit home runs and stole bases and made the catch. And one of the things he did was to pummel a Spalding. It's not a Spalding, it's a Spalding playing stickball. So I argued with the Yankee fans who were most prevalent, this being the Bronx, 5 miles from the stadium, 7 miles from the Polo Grounds. And I was adamant. He was fast. Mantle was fast, but Willie was fast and he stole bases. Mantle hit home runs. Willie hit home runs, but he also ran fast and he stole bases. And Willie could catch the ball and Willie could throw the ball. And Mickey was not a good fielder. Oh, Mickey was above average, I conceded, but Willie was a far superior fielder, a defender. Ask Vic Wirtz and the Cleveland Ball Club. They were called the Indians back then. And then the puzzling retort came from my white Yankees fan friends. Yes, but Mickey is smarter. What? Smarter. In retrospect, I suspect that my friends were hearing something in their apartments that was not something that was being heard in my family's apartment. Willie had the voice, the high-pitched voice of a Negro raised in the Birmingham environs. Mickey? He had an Oklahoma twang, but he might have been more easily understood, maybe. But again, in retrospect, Mickey was white, Willie black. It was perhaps that simple and that insidious. I am proud of my answer, even though I could not comprehend the context of the statement. I responded, if I want a doctor, I would call Dr. Rosenthal. If I were choosing up size, I would choose Willie Mays first and foremost for my baseball team or my stickball team. When the Giants announced that they were moving to San Francisco, I was 12. I heard on the radio that, I'm not sure of the year, I didn't look this up, that some bigot had thrown an object through Willie's window in San Francisco. because they did not want a black man to move in that particular San Francisco neighborhood. But it was Willie Mays. How could they dislike Willie Mays? I was naively baffled. I thought, if they don't want Willie Mays out there, send them back to us. And while you're at it, send the Giants too, because I couldn't see Willie playing for the Yankees. Why would anyone dislike Willie Mays? Me? He had my heart and my mind. I loved Willie Mays. I wanted to be like Willie Mays. I learned history closer to the truth at James Monroe High School and then CCNY, where I cut class in to take the A train to see Willie and the Giants play the Mets at the Polo Grounds. I was 17, excuse me. Helen and I met at CCNY. We were married when we were 22. We registered to vote, but not in a political party, because we learned at CCNY that the Democrats of the South, who were blocking the civil rights laws, all became Republicans when the laws were passed in 64 and 65. Jackie Robinson was co-hosting a Mets pregame, or it was a postgame show, I'm not sure, with Howard Cosell. Jackie was highly critical of Willie because Jackie perceived that Willie was not vocal enough to support the civil rights movement. I was upset with Jackie. I believe then, a belief that has been confirmed in many ways and by many observers, that Willie was eloquent in his ability to exude a brilliance and captivated many people, children in particular. He still had my heart and mind. To a tolerance that was and still is needed. To say that Willie led by example is an understatement. Indeed, Willie was continuing to capture the hearts and minds of people, of children, and as he had captured mine. I'm going to jump ahead. I was going to vote for John McCain for president in 2008 because I thought he was an American war hero, but then Senator McCain chose a vice president running mate that made no sense to me. So I voted for Senator Obama. But I became somewhat disenchanted with the things that President Obama did, and I was planning to vote for Senator Romney in 2012. Helen was upset with me. Oh, she wouldn't tolerate me. Then President Obama gave Willie a lift on Air Force One to the All-Star game. I was captivated by the video clip of Willie sitting across from the president on the plane, and an emotional Willie revealing that he never envisioned a black man becoming president. Helen asked me why I changed my mind and decided to vote for President Obama. She adored Michelle. She thought she should have been president. My answer made her laugh, but she understood. President Obama gave Willie a lift on Air Force One to the All-Star game. I apologize if you think I have politicized this discussion. Again, for the record, my party designation was actually changed from independent to unaffiliated administratively by the state of New York, because there's something called the Independence Party. When Willie turned 90, Major League Baseball produced a video montage of well-wishers. Aaron Judge, was a Giants fan as a child, and he effusively told Willie that he, Aaron Judge, had a treasured Willie Mays autographed baseball, which was still in his old room in Northern California. Our now 11-year-old grandson, James, is an avid Yankees fan, and Judge is his favorite. I gifted James, then 8, my Willie Mays signed baseball that had been gifted to me by a dear now departed friend who himself had been a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. I also gave James a magazine-type book, which had a story about Jackie and a separate story about Willie. And I also gave James a figurine of Jackie festooned in a Monarchs uniform, sliding spikes up into a base. James, whose room is a virtual baseball shrine, has the figurine in the book, but most prominently his Willie ball. Just like his idol, Aaron Judge, who, interestingly, a couple of weeks ago when Willie passed, Judge said that he had spoken to Willie, and Willie gave Judge tips on throwing a ball from center field. Willie has had a provable positive effect on my life and my thinking. I have been a Willie Mays fan through his New York Giants and San Francisco Giants days and his 2 years with the Mets since July 10th, 1954. And I continue to be a Willie Mays fan forever. I am one of the millions who I believe were affected positively by Willie Mays. When you capture the hearts and minds of children, you bring about a good result. And those children become adults, become parents, become grandparents who pass on their love for Willie and what he represents far beyond just baseball. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Before we go any further, I just want to apologize. I'm just trying to run this meeting in the best way I can. And please make sure you have your mute button on. It's much appreciated. All right. We're going to go in this order. Steve, Greg, Tom O, Jerry, Tom V, Rick, Dennis, Robert S, Howard Manis, Renee, and whoever else is left that I might have missed. Steve, you are up.
All right, terrific. Well, I take the experience of experiencing Willie on the West Coast. I live just outside of San Francisco, and I was born in 1957, right after the Giants played their last game in New York, and we're moving to San Francisco. My first memories of Willie were 1965. At least those are the first memories that I could say, yeah, I remember when that happened. I was probably aware of him before that, and I was aware of the 1962 World Series, but the only memories I have are, they're not really memories, but what I read about the 62 World Series, culminating in McCovey's line drive with Willie on second base. What Willie means to me is it was a family deal. My mom, dad, and my brother Jim, I say to this day, my mom always had a crush on Willie. It was incredible because when the Giants came to San Francisco, they took their announcer, Russ Hodges, with them. And I don't know if he said it in New York, but when somebody would hit a home run in San Francisco, his call was, "Tell it bye-bye, baby." And that just, if you were listening to the game on the radio, and that's how we listened to, that's how we paid attention, it just gave goosebumps. And he had different versions of "Tell It Bye-Bye, Baby," real excited or matter-of-factly or whatever. But it was the most exciting thing. And I was 10 years old, or I was about to turn 10 in 1967, and it was leading up to Bat Day in May. And unfortunately, my dad had to work that day. There was something going on where he couldn't get the day off. So my mom took my brother, me, and then Ricky, who lived across the street. And for that whole week, she was telling everybody she talked to, whether it was the next door neighbor, the checkout clerk in the grocery store, "We're going to the Giants game. It's Bat Day, and I'm going to see Willie hit a bye-bye, baby." And sure enough, they were playing Houston, and Mike Cuellar was before. I remember Mike Cuellar mostly with the Orioles, but I looked on Baseball Reference to kind of refresh my memory. He was pitching for the Astros that day. He got the first two guys out, struck out the first two guys, and then Willie hit a home run. And then he struck out McCovey. So he struck out the side with Mays hitting a home run. And then later in the game, Mays scored from second, just your basic base hit. But Willie barreled around third, his hat flew off, and we slid across home plate. And that's everything I needed to see. And it culminated. My mom is still thriving. She's 88. She'll turn 88 in September. And she sent me the text Tuesday night. She heard before I did that Willie passed away. And she sent me the text. And then the Giants they have their ups and downs right now competitively, but they are such a classy organization. They opened up Oracle Park on the night of the Rickwood Field game, so we could all go, and they didn't charge us. We could buy food if we wanted to, and they showed the game. They had something in center field where, fans were walking on the field. Some people wanted to sit on the lawn rather than the stands, and they had like this tent up where you could walk through, and they had these large sheets of paper where fans could write whatever they wanted. And I simply wrote October 1st, 1965, Dad took me to my first game, first time I saw Willie play against the Cincinnati Reds. And, everybody wrote what they want. And then I actually lived closer to Oakland, and the A's came, and Willie gets traded. Mets make the World Series in 1973. They play the A's, and I got lucky, and I got to go to games 1, 6, and 7. I missed game 2 when Willie got a big hit to help win that game for the Mets, but I went to game 1, 6, and 7, and I think Yogi Berra had a choice. He could pinch hit one of two people with 2 outs in the 9th inning of game 7, and I don't remember who he chose, but Willie was the other guy, and he didn't put Willie up there. But God, what would it have been like if Willie Mays, he could have gotten a hit in his last at bat. He could have struck out in his last at bat. But what a way that would have been to go out. Game 7 of the World Series, 2 outs in the 9th inning. But it's just unforgettable. And the other part was I'd never miss an interview because he was so fun to listen to. And there were times he could just be so funny. He'd come out with some of the greatest lines, and he always made me feel good. So that's what Willie means to me.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Right. The next gentleman, other than Howie Rose and Gary Cohen, this is really Mr. Met, Greg Prince. Greg, floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Gary. Thanks, everybody. It's just so fantastic to hear these reminiscences and stories and perspectives. Mine is of a 7-year-old going into Bell's Luncheonette, aka the candy store on Park Street in Long Beach here on Long Island. It's the summer of 1970. I'm aware of Willie Mays because my 3 uncles, as it were, Bob Murphy, Ralph Kiner, and Lindsey Nelson, have made me aware of the significance of Willie Mays to New York and to the lineage that has led to the Mets. And they, along with a list I saw of the all-time home run leaders to that point, which had Babe Ruth #1 and Willie Mays #2. And I knew Babe Ruth wasn't around. I didn't care about his team. So I was fascinated with Willie Mays, even though I was a Mets fan. And I remember going into Bell's Luncheonette that summer, the first summer I collected baseball cards. And in addition to the regular series, they had these oversized cards, these super tops, I believe they were called. And I asked the man who ran Bell's Luncheonette, excuse me, if I buy one of these, the big kind, can I get a Willie Mays in there? And the guy kind of looked at me and said, I don't know, kid. And, I used several dimes and got, Tommy Agee, Rusty Staub, then of the Expos, Ron Santo, a few other greats. No Willie Mays. So right away, Willie Mays seemed unattainable to me. Just at the top of baseball, and somebody who I can only admire from afar in all-star games and the occasional game of the week and in the listings on the Sunday papers. And in 1971, again, watching from afar and rooting for the Giants in October against the Pirates, seeing him in the playoffs, as we called them then. And then a couple of years later, from my unsuccessful trip to the candy store at the other place I bought baseball cards, the Cozy Nook, first pack of 1972. What do I get? Yellow background, red and black lettering, Willie Mays staring out at me. I got a Willie Mays card for the first time. Also got a Cleon Jones card, I'm happy to report. And I was very excited. I took it home. I turned it over. I looked at the statistics. There's no space on there for a little comic balloon telling me how much Willie likes to chew bubble gum or something like that, because he's been around so long. And I'm learning about more of his career than just the fact that he's second behind Babe Ruth, with Hank Aaron coming up on him since I first learned about all this. And I see, in addition to San Francisco, long lines of San Francisco and a couple of minor league lines in Trenton, Minneapolis, I see New York NL. And I said, I know he never played for the Mets, but he played for New York National League. That must be, the New York Giants. That's right. That's what Bob and Lindsay and Ralph have been talking about, whenever the Giants are in town. And I kind of began to put it all together, that this guy, this team, was sort of a part of my life without my even realizing it, part of my heritage. Unlike a lot of you, my parents were wonderful people. They weren't huge baseball fans, and they weren't Giants fans. My mother grew up in Brooklyn, and every now and then would throw out a name, talk about, hey, remember Pistol Pete Reeser, or somebody like that. But that never really meant a lot to me. And my father was taken to Yankee Stadium as a kid and couldn't stand it, and just kind of drifted away from baseball, drifted back later a little bit. But anyway, I had my baseball uncles, I had my baseball cards, and I had this baseball card. And in a matter of weeks, I had the New York Post my father brought home, then an afternoon paper, that said, Mets get Willie Mays. And I have to tell you, as somebody who's been a Mets fan this long, who has gotten shivers up and down my spine at the idea that we traded for George Foster, ex-Giant, Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, later Mike Piazza, Roberto Alomar, Johan Santana, you name any big player the Mets got, nothing ever shocked me like when we got Willie Mays when I was 9 years old. And understanding immediately what it meant, and understanding that even though the batting average wasn't there and he hadn't hit a home run yet that year, how, no pun intended, how amazing this was. And now he was on my team, and now I felt completely connected to this man who had been playing for New York National League 20 years before. And, that sort of sealed it. It's the reason I'm on these calls from time to time, and I cherish all the emails Gary sends out. It was actually 20 years ago this week. One of the predecessor groups of this group, the Nostalgia Society, I don't think that had a name yet, had the first meeting I ever went to in July of 2004 in a garage. Verizon's, somebody knew somebody at Verizon. There were like 6 Giant fans there. And then I showed up, and I was the 7th New York Giants fan to come and sit and hear the stories. And it really all started with Willie Mays. Again, I cherish, the whole history. John McGraw, Christy Mathewson, later Bill Terry, Carl Hubble, Mel Ott, right into Bobby Thompson and Monty Irvin. But what I really love, what it means to me, is that Willie Mays was the connection to all of this. Gary used the word link before. Willie has linked us all these years to that history. Not the last living New York Giant, but the last New York Giant everybody knew. And the longer he lived, the more vibrant the history of the New York Giants became, not just to people like us, many of you who experienced it, or me who experienced it through reading and film clips, but to just everybody who saw Willie Mays, saw those film clips of him making that catch and playing stickball in the street. And I think about really the misguided notion that Willie, quote unquote, hung on too long, age 42, Sunfield in Oakland, all of that. Nobody did a better job of hanging around longer than Willie Mays, because Willie Mays kept us all engaged in Giants history, New York Giants history, baseball history. And as we saw with Rickwood Field, being that connection to what is, for a lot of Americans, an unknown chapter of American history and baseball history. And, you can put it all online, you can put it all in a book, but the fact that Willie Mays was around was the embodiment of all of this history. And it just filled me with such excitement and pride for somebody who only saw him at the few years at the end of his career. And I'll just wind it down with, one of the great thrills of my life as a Mets fan was being in the stands in August of 2022 when, as narrated by Howie Rose, they were hinting that the Mets were going to retire number 24. And I couldn't believe it was actually happening in the city of New York, where it should have happened a long time before. And I was on the verge of tears. And I fought them back because I'm thinking, these are the Mets. They'll disappoint me somehow. And they will wind up, using this as a segue for something completely unrelated. But no, number 24 went up. Michael Mays was there. It was fantastic. I get such nachas, as they say, looking up at number 24 every time I'm in Citi Field. And again, 2 weeks ago when the word came down, I really felt like the head of state was gone, of the state of baseball, if you will. But we were so blessed that this man lives to be 93 years old and will stay with us, obviously, from listening to you guys, is never going anywhere. So I appreciate the chance to throw in my 24 cents, as it were. And thanks to all of you.
Greg, that was great. If I wasn't a Giant fan, I think I root for the Mets because of you. So that was great. Tom O, you are up. Tom O'Doul.
There we go. How you doing, guys? I got to show you the shirt first. A friend of mine made this up for Mays' 92nd birthday. Said, you got to have a Mays shirt. And then I wore the Mays cap today. Being a San Francisco guy, I can relate to when Mays first came to San Francisco. He wasn't treated very well at all for the so-called tolerant city of San Francisco. But eventually, he grew on the city and the city grew on him. What I really remember about Mays, what he did for San Francisco and the youth of San Francisco, he was an ambassador for baseball in the city. He had a foundation, the Say Hey Foundation, which was for kids for baseball. And kind of followed in the footsteps of Lefty O'Doul, my cousin, who was in that same kind of idea about kids in baseball. You get a kid a baseball, you give him a bat, you sign an autograph, you got a fan for life. And that's the way Mays was. He was all for the kids, always willing to sign an autograph for a kid. He might shove off somebody like me, but he would always be there for the kids. And that's what his legacy he left in San Francisco. Just an incredible guy. I only met him once, one-on-one. I saw him a lot at the ballpark, but I never even got time to sit down with him. But when I did meet him, it was an experience I'll never forget. One more thing, and then I'll shut up. I missed one day of school in high school, and that was April 15th, 1958, when my dad took me out of school to go see Willie Mays play. Okay, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tom. That was great. Jerry Leibowitz. Jerry, you're up.
Hi, how are you guys? Well, I was a New York Giant fan back in 1938. So that makes me a little old. But the bottom line is I became a Giant fan because I didn't know anything other than follow along whatever my father was doing. And he was a Giant fan for many, many years. I went to the Polo Grounds starting in the very late part of 1938, 39, one of those two seasons. I'm not exactly sure which of the two. And we went to the Polo Grounds many, many years, as often as we could possibly go. And the way we did it is that my father, who owned a candy store at the time, took off every Wednesday, and he would take me and some of my friends to the Polo Grounds to see the Giants play. And this started, I believe, somewhere around 1939. It could have been 38, but I'm not 100% sure of that. And the practice followed for years and years and years until all of us got older and went our separate ways. The bottom line is that I had many opportunities to meet many of the Giant players over the years. One of my closest personal friends became a fella that all of you would probably remember by the name of Bobby Thompson. Bobby and I shared an awful lot of times together. a phenomenal, fantastic individual, great guy. And no matter how many people he got hounded by for autographs or where he was or whatever, he would always sign. He would always take time to speak to fans and be friendly to everybody. Bobby was just a really great guy. This basically led me to follow the Giants until one sad day when they announced that they were moving to San Francisco. I wasn't too happy about having to root for a team that was 3,000 miles away. It bothered me a little bit. And on the other side of the coin, I was sort of conflicted. And what I decided to do to make up my mind was to get an airline ticket, fly to San Francisco, get seats, go to a couple of ball games and meet a few people. I did this through my connections with the front office of the Giants. They were very kind to me. I did go out there. I did spend a few days out there. They played in a horrible ballpark at the time, a temporary ballpark, I might add, which was not even up to minor league standards, no less major league standards. But the bottom line is that I got a chance to see them. They took me to the locker room. They introduced me to some of the players. And the only two players that I actually met before that were two guys that became friends of mine for a very long time. One was Monty Irvin, and the other was Bobby Thompson. Both of them were fantastic guys. We did a lot of things together, went to a lot of shows. I used to accompany them to autograph signings and things of that type. We went out to dinner a lot, but they were two really wonderful individuals. I did meet a few other players here and there, but those two guys really stand out to the point where there's nothing about them that I did not like. And so as time passed, I continued to root for the San Francisco Giants for a while. And then I said to myself, you know what, this is crazy. I'm rooting for a team that's 3,000 miles away. I've gone out there twice now to see them play. The team was very gracious to me. They sent me tickets and so forth and so on. I said, but I don't like the idea that I have to stay up at night until 2 and 3 in the morning to listen to most of their games. That really irritated me. And so I decided something had to be done about it. I gave it a little thought. And frankly, I decided that I could no longer root for the San Francisco Giants. That decision was aided a little bit by the coming of the New York Mets. So at least I had a place to go. I had a ballpark to go to. I had a team to follow. I sure as hell wasn't going to root for the Yankees. That was just an absolute no-no as far as I was concerned. But it worked out. The Mets were fine. They were a good organization. They were friendly. It was easy back and forth to the ballpark, and I enjoyed those days as well. I did have 3 or 4 trips out to San Francisco. The Giants set me up with tickets and different arrangements with things out there. They were very kind to me, and I did enjoy it, but there is just no way that I could see myself being a fan of somebody that played 3,000 miles away, and I had to stand up at 4 o'clock in the morning to watch half their games. This was absolutely unacceptable to me. And so as time went on, I sort of faded away from San Francisco. And what was the real determining factor of me fading away, other than the time element, was the arrival of the Mets. This was sort of interesting. Here's a new team that's starting up. They were pathetic at the beginning, but they started to grow. They started to spend money. They became a decent organization in the course of time, and they were filling the ballpark. And all of a sudden, I realized that I guess my days as a San Francisco Giant fan, which were a hell of a lot shorter than my days as a New York Giant fan. I guess those days were sort of coming to a close, and that I would now be a Met fan. And that's exactly what I did. I only made 3 trips to the West Coast, to San Francisco. Both of them, the first 2, I should say, of the 3, was set up and taken care and made arrangements for me through the San Francisco Giants front office. The 3rd trip, I had other reasons to be out there, so I really didn't bother them about it. But I did get a chance to see them in Candlestick Park as well. But, you know, when you have to root for somebody 3,000 miles away, in my case, it sort of became painful. I lost the incentive to want to root for a team that played most of their games at night, which meant that if I wanted to see or view their games, I had to stay up until 3 or 4 in the morning. That was utterly ridiculous. And now all of a sudden the Mets come along, and very frankly, I got interested in the Mets. And all of a sudden, I realized that my interest in the San Francisco Giants was not the same as my interest in the New York Giants. It was different. They were too far away from me. And so I became a Mets fan. I did keep some of my contacts with the Giants. My major contact and closest friend was Bobby Thompson. We kept in touch for years. I was very, very close with Bobby over the years. I met his daughter because when Bobby was getting on a little bit in age, she was a little concerned that nobody in the New York area could take care of him or help him. And she was living in California at the time. But Bobby Thompson was a great guy. I hope some of you had the opportunity to have met him. And beyond that, I hope some of you even had the opportunity to spend a considerable amount of time with him, because he was a fantastic individual, and everything that the guy did was like class A. I went to many functions with him. He was great to fans. He treated everybody kindly. People would mob him for autographs. Every day when his mail would come, there'd be 10, 20, 15, who knows how many pictures of him or pieces of paper that people wanted him to sign and mail back. He did all of that, whatever he was asked to do. Unfortunately, like everybody at some time or other, he got a little bit disabled. At that point, I spoke with his daughter, and she asked me if I felt that he should stay living in the New York area or whether he needed a little more attention, because she was willing to pick him up and take him in. And I said, by all means. I said, I hate like hell to lose him because we've become such great friends, but at the same time, I think what you could do for him is more than anybody else can do for him. And so that basically is my story about Bobby. I think that for any of you that have met him and spent any kind of time with him and got to know him, you knew what kind of guy he was. He was a fantastic individual, and he was a credit to the sport.
Thank you so much, Jerry. We're going to go to Rick and then Tom V. Rick Swig.
Okay. I'll try to get through this.
Rick, I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you guys too. It's been a tough 2 weeks. I'm in mourning. If I can get through this. So I thought I could talk, but I don't think I can. So, you know, what does Willie Mays mean to me? I sit in my office, and on my wall, I looked up yesterday and I laughed because my entire office wall is dominated with images of Willie Mays. So I guess he must have meant something to me. But it's just one of those things, you know, you look up at your surroundings in a room that you worked in for 25 years or more, And I suddenly became aware I'm surrounded by this guy, this personage. And then for me, it's been separating the guy that I saw on the field as a child and the man I got to know pretty closely over the last 30 years of my life. And then there's a difference, and there's a big difference. Everything that I hear week after week about Willie Mays, the player, he was the greatest of all time. There's no doubt. Don't you dare talk about any number two, because there was no number two for me. He's the only player. He's the greatest player of all time. Then there's the guy who's the guy not that you don't see. The guy that I had the privilege of knowing, like I say, very, very closely for the last 25 years. Let me tell you guys, the last 2 or 3 years have been tough. He didn't get out of bed for the last 2 years except for one time, and that was to go to the ballpark for one last time on his birthday a year and a half ago, or a year and 2 months ago, and he really wanted to be there. And it was really hard for him, really hard for him. He had no business getting out of bed, and it set him back because he wanted to be there. He loved the ballpark, and he loved people. I was with him in lots of places where I shouldn't have been, but I was. And I noted this guy who had amazing personal values. And those values were shared by those who knew him as well. He was an eye for an eye guy. He was not a taker. Anybody that told you that he was a taker, he lectured me on many, many occasions when I would give him things. He said, no, I don't want to take that, because if I take that, I'll owe you, and I don't want to owe anybody. So he was not a taker. He was a giver, and the care that he had for people was unbelievable. My son, who's 40 years old, going to be 40 years old, was like a godson to Willie for most of his life. And Willie, he cared about my son Adam, and he taught him. He was godfather. He taught him all the good things. I taught him all the bad things. But he was always trying to set him straight. He told me my son told me a story the other day. And Gary, if I'm start wandering around my words, please tell me to shut up. My son Adam had the pleasure and honor of riding in the World Series car during the World Series game after the World Series game 2014 up the parade in San Francisco. And Willie said, and Adam says, "Hey Willie, how come you didn't invite my dad?" He says, "Because I invited you." So why don't you invite my dad? If I wanted to invite your dad, I would have invited him, Adam. I invited you. So when people invite you, Adam, you say thank you, and don't be asking anybody else. Don't be asking anybody, can my friend, can my father, or anybody else. He had this very rigid value. If I ask you, my friend, as my special person, to go with me anywhere, you say thank you, and don't ask for anything else. And that's how extraordinarily high his values about manners and protocol and proper manners were. He had tremendous care. I have so many stories about Willie Mays, but I want to read you something, guys, if I can get through it, that Willie wrote 5 days before he passed away in honor of Orlando Spada. And he says, I think Orlando's maybe passing before I do. And so I want to make sure that I have something written for him. This shows about care. This shows about values. This shows about what kind of man this guy was. And he wanted this was his statement for the public, and I want you guys to hear it. Because I want you guys to have your faces covered with tears. This is what Willie wrote. Today is a hard day for me. I've known Orlando 70 years. Since she was 17 years old. He was like a little brother. How do you say goodbye to a little brother? Orlando was our bat boy in Puerto Rico. When I played winter ball for the Santurce team, that 1954 team was really great. We had Roberto Clemente, Tommy Thomas, Buster Clarkson, and Bob Thurman. Some said it was one of the best winter league teams ever put together. And there was this big kid hanging around. They called him the Baby Bull after his father, Pedro Cepeda, the Bull. Sometimes the kid caught balls Clemente and I thought would throw from the outfield. You could just hear how much he loved the game. He grew up fast. 4 years later, he'd be my Giants teammate. Orlando stayed an eager kid to us. He looked up to us veterans. He watched everything. And he learned all kinds of things, everything. When he saw that I carried a record player with me, he got one the next day. He trained the same way. He grew stronger, more powerful, and more confident. He was a kid playing with a man and learning how to become one. I knew he watched us, and that made me watch him too, and make sure I was doing the right things for him. That kid could play. I knew he'd be all right. Me, I felt proud of Orlando. You already knew his successes, his records, his numbers. He's an MVP, winning Hall of Famer, but to me, he was like family. When he was looking up to me, I was watching out for him. He made his own way, but he will always be my little brother. You always look out after your little brother, even after they grow. So long, kid.
Rick, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
That's all I can say. I'm in mourning for two dear friends. Sorry.
I don't think anybody could have said anything better than what you had said tonight. So thank you. Tom B, you're up.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Good. Well, this is a perfect segue for me because, as Gary well knows, I had an article published this morning about Orlando Cepeda because I first met Orlando in 1967 when I was 13 years old, and he was one of the first two people who talked to me about Willie Mays. My family moved to the island of Puerto Rico when I was 2 years old, so I did my schooling through 12th grade in Santurce, which is not too far from where Willie Mays played. I was also born in June of 1954, so I can say that I was about 100 days old when Willie Mays made that great catch in Game 1 of the World Series. Another player who talked to me about Willie Mays was a left-handed pitcher named Don Little. If you recall, Don Little was the small lefty, about 5'9", 5'10". He was the guy that faced Vic Wertz that afternoon. And ironically, Don Little also played in the Puerto Rico Winter League that was mentioned a few minutes ago. The Puerto Rico Winter League that Willie Mays joined in 1954 was a hotbed of baseball back then. And if I could, rather than we're not supposed to talk about stats, but I will say a couple stories about Horace Doneman and Herman Franks and how Willie Mays got to Puerto Rico. Willie Mays had a few issues off the field after the World Series, and I think Pedrin Zorrilla, the Santurce owner, convinced Donem that it might be kind of nice for Mays to spend a few months in the Caribbean away from New York City. Another thing was Soria had also had Ruben Gomez signed with the Giants in '53. So Stoneham agreed because Stoneham thought that, Gomez had done a good job. So Stoneham was receptive to Mays spending part of the winter in San Juan. And of course, he had a great season. Bill Greason, who is still alive and threw the first pitch the other night in Birmingham, Bill Greason and I had several long phone interviews. And Greason told me that he and his wife lived in an apartment in Santurce in October '54. And what they did when Mays came down there on October the 16th, he had a lot of home cooking. Bill Greason's wife cooked a lot of dishes that Mays really enjoyed. So Mays was very comfortable in Puerto Rico, but unlike other players, became better players after Puerto Rico. Mays has said publicly that I was already a very good player. So I don't mean to imply that Puerto Rico was that good for Mays as a player. However, it was a very cohesive unit that had a lot of Negro leaguers. For example, there was a white player who was a Giants prospect named Pete Burnside. Have any of you heard of him? He was a left-handed pitcher who went to Dartmouth. And Pete told me in our phone conversations that his graduate thesis at Dartmouth, which is an Ivy League school, focused on Black baseball players. And it's just so happened that that Santurce team in '54-55 was basically a laboratory for Bill Greason, because you had Buster Clarkson and George Crowe and Mays and the great Roberto Clemente. And I think was mentioned previously that they practiced together, and Herman Franks and Cepeda, along with Mays and Clemente, and occasionally Louis Olmo, who used to play with the Brooklyn Dodgers, would practice to try to help Clemente get rid of the ball more quickly and be a little bit smoother in the field. Ironically, Olmo, Mays, and Clemente all used the basket catch. So the few times that Olmo played in the outfield with Mays and Clemente, it was the only time in Puerto Rico Winter League history that all three outfielders used the basket catch. And the fans really enjoyed that. Herman Franks told me, Herman Franks wrote the foreword for a book that I wrote 25 years ago on the Santurce Grabbers franchise. And Herman told me that Mays was the best player that he ever coached, managed, or saw play, with Clemente a close second. And that Herman Franks was privileged to manage in Puerto Rico for 2 years. Another thing that a lot of people may not be aware of is that Herman Franks also managed in Caracas, Venezuela for one winter season. And a number of New York Giants prospects also played in Venezuela. So that's kind of some interesting trivia. Willie Mays enjoyed playing dominoes in Puerto Rico. One of his friends on the team was a left-handed outfielder named Bob Thurman, who joined the Cincinnati Reds at age 38 in 1955. And on these long bus trips, occasionally before the bus trips, Thurman and Mays would compete in dominoes against fans, just for fun, just to pass the time. So those are some of the things that Mays did in Puerto Rico. Now, Ruben Gomez was very close to Mays too, probably not as close as Cepeda. And Ruben told me that Mays, he never saw Mays drink alcohol. Mays was very clean cut, very polite, signed autographs. And ironically, Mays agreed to go with Santurce to the Caribbean World Series that was hosted by Caracas in February of '55. And the book that's going to come out later this year that I wrote will have a picture on the cover of Willie Mays. He hit a walk-off homer like at midnight in a critical game that won the decisive game for Santurce. And Mays was at first they were shocked because he was like 0 for 12, but then he went like 11 through 13 after that home run and ended up hitting 440. A couple final stories about Willie Mays in Puerto Rico. I played 8-man football, and the first year that I played 8-man football in Puerto Rico, we played at the same stadium that Willie Mays played for. It's called Sixto Escobar Stadium. And because of Willie Mays, I decided to wear number 24 when I played football. So that was kind of an interesting story. The last couple of things I'd like to mention about Willie Mays, specifically about Puerto Rico, is that in addition to the practices, Willie Mays, there was one night in Puerto Rico where Willie Mays got a couple of innings off, and he would go out in this 8th or 9th inning, and he actually warmed up the pitcher. And there was a scout, I think one of the scouts from the States was watching that winter league game and could not believe that a superstar like Willie Mays would go out while the regular catcher was putting on his gear, that Willie Mays would catch 8 or 9 warm-up pitches. That was the kind of guy that Willie Mays was in Puerto Rico. Now, he did make several trips. Willie Mays was a big football fan, so he got to see the Army-Navy game. So the Santurce owner would buy the plane tickets so that Mays would see it, the Army-Navy football game, or get a special award while, in between games in Puerto Rico. But Willie always came back to Puerto Rico to finish the season. And pretty much, I think there was one other thing I'd like to mention about Willie Mays, and it was because occasionally the team owner would take, on off days, they would take the players to the beach house, and Willie Mays would enjoy barbecue and talking to some of the fans and all that. So basically, it was a very positive experience for Willie Mays in Puerto Rico, and I appreciate the opportunity tonight.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Tom is an expert on Latino baseball in Puerto Rico, and we'll be speaking about Ruben Gomez come October. So we look forward to that. Dennis Liff, you are up. Dennis, make sure you unmute. There you go.
Thank you. In my life, Willie Mays was this may sound like hyperbole, but he was the closest thing to God. And I'm very impressed by the people who spoke, because I've always thought that nobody loved and worshiped him as much as I did. But there are people here who stories and memories are amazing. It's very hard to accept or admit that he's gone, especially because I remember so many times he was described as Peter Pan. And Peter Pan was never supposed to grow up or grow old or die. On 6 years ago, on my 70th birthday, my son brought me a blown up photograph of two of my two favorite people in the public world. And you don't have to like the other one to listen to what I'm going to say. It was a picture taken in April of 1960, the first day of the league opening in Candlestick Park, first game that had ever been played. And in the dugout, with their hands touching, was a blown up photograph of Willie Mays and Richard Nixon.
Oh.
And just this week, I read that someone said, I can't believe that there were photographs taken of the two of them, but there was not one reporter who was there to describe what happened. And they were like, if you look at the picture, you can see it online, they were like laughing, like this broad smile, both of them. Nixon was looking right at Mays, and Mays was sort of looking straight forward, but they had this someone must have told a very good joke, because they were both laughing. And I thought about it today because I know everything about the two of them, at least their public lives. And it's amazing how the two of them, their careers overlapped. Nixon became a congressman in the late 40s. Willie Mays was 16 at 48 when he played in Birmingham, 17 when he was in Trenton, and I think 18, 19 in Trenton and Minneapolis. And both of them were young phenoms. And then Nixon became Ike's boy in 1952, elevated to vice president. And Willie became Leo's boy in 1951 when he started for the Giants and won the hearts of New York on the way to winning the hearts of the whole country. So their careers really overlapped. And another way that I thought they were similar, maybe you won't agree, Nixon was very shy, and I think so was Willie Mays, was not as extroverted as he appeared. If you asked him something or started a conversation, I always felt like he was overcompensating for his shyness, and he would take the attention to the floor and tell stories and laugh. But I think he was basically a shy person. And the impact that both of them had on the country in their respective fields of politics and baseball. I followed politics for a long time, and whether I say whether you resent or hate Nixon or not, his followers were more passionate than any politician I've ever seen in their devotion to him. And remember people saying I'd run my grandmother over, I'd drive someone over a car for Nixon. And that's how we felt about Willie Mays. Is there anybody, any baseball player who inspired the admiration, the devotion that Willie Mays did to us? No. So what he meant to me, you can't describe it. I looked at the other day at my junior high school yearbook from the mid-60s, and I see I was one of the few white people in the Civil Rights Club. I didn't join because I was told at an early age that everybody has to be treated equally for my family, although we were liberal people. I did it because, I didn't do it because Willie Mays said anything about his blackness. If anything, he never acknowledged it until his later years when he talked a lot about his experiences as a black man. But I know I joined because if Willie Mays was black, then of course everybody was equal and everybody had it. It made no sense. Or as Clinton said, after Willie Mays, racism is absurd. So I thought of a passage in the Haggadah for the Passover where it says, we can't just remember that we were slaves in Egypt. We actually have to feel that we were part of that people, that we were part of that. Imagine that we were part of that experience that left Egypt, went to the desert, and stood at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. That's what Willie Mays is to me. I read it this week, or my son told me, Willie Mays was a feeling. He wasn't memories. He's a feeling. I don't have to watch a film. I don't even have to close my eyes as I'm doing now. I can see Willie Mays running around the bases in that unique gallop that he had, which no one can ever come close to imitating. I can see him chasing a fly ball, and I could see him that stance at the plate and probably the most vicious, violent swing that he had. So I've always said Willie Mays didn't play baseball. Willie Mays was baseball. I guess I'll finish with maybe the only day that was sadder for me than hearing that he died was that night in September of 1973, when I stood there with my father and my then fiance. And when he stood at first base and said, Willie, it's time to say goodbye to America. And I guess it's time to say goodbye to Willie Mays. And it's probably the hardest thing all of us will ever have to do. Say thank you, Gary.
Dennis. That was very passionate. Jeremy, did you want to say a quick thing, or your dad spoke for both of you?
What Willie means to me is what he means to my dad, and obviously he transcended baseball and youth and happiness, and it's a credit to everyone here. So
thank you. Howard Manis, you are up.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I'd like to echo what Paul had said earlier, in that Willie created a bond between myself and my father. I was always treated very well by my parents, better than my older brother because I was the baby of the family. But my father loved baseball, he loved Willie. We used to throw and have a catch on the streets of Highbridge in the Bronx with a pink Spalding. Now, I know many of the people here have been to the Polo Grounds, but I don't know how many people live within walking distance of the Polo Grounds. I did. Even though we lived in the Bronx, all we had to do was walk about 20 minutes towards Yankee Stadium, which I wouldn't even look at. And we would cross the 155th Street Bridge and we'd be at the Polo Grounds. So I had a special feeling towards, not so much the New York Giants because I was very young. I've mentioned to this group before that I was only 4 or 5 years old when they left New York. But my father took me to a lot of games when the Giants came to New York to play the expansion Mets and the 63 Mets. So I felt very closely to the Polo Grounds, you know, and then 20 minutes after the game, we were home. We didn't have to bother with a car or whatever. I finally met Willie many, many years later at an autograph show. And I was disappointed because he hardly even said a word. He was signing the autographs to Paul so quickly. But I had a little bit of a longer conversation with him, and I might say longer, maybe 30 seconds, in January of 2011 at I think it was the Hilton Hotel on Avenue of the Americas in Manhattan, when he was there for the Giants World Series tour with the trophy. And I had my then 15-year-old son with me. And I went up to Willie. He was there, introduced myself to him and introduced my son. And then I congratulated him on the Giants championship in 2010, the first one since 54, the first World Series championship. I was 1 year old in 54. So I don't remember that one. So Willie looked at me, shook my hand, and then he laughed and he said in that high-pitched voice of his, "Why are you congratulating me? I wasn't out there in center field. I wasn't running the bases. I was a spectator just like you." And my son didn't know what to say. And I said, "Well, still, you're a Giant. You're a Giant for life. And even though I'm now a Met fan, I grew up rooting for you." So he put his arm around me and said, "Listen, I'm just kidding with you. Thanks for the compliments. We're all glad that the Giants finally got that trophy." And I went to the 2013 trophy too, down at that, I think it was at that bar down in Manhattan where a lot of Giants fans and San Francisco fans go to. And then I saw it at the Yogi Berra Museum as well, the last one that they won. But meeting Willie and congratulating him on a World Series championship that he should have had in 1962, it was very exciting for me. And as a kid from New York, the streets of New York, within walking distance of the Polo Grounds, I loved Willie. And as I said the day that he passed away, and as many, many other people said, especially on Facebook where I said it, my childhood died. I might be 71 years old, but my childhood has finally died with the passing of Willie Mays. And I also said that when Willis Reed died the year earlier or 2 years earlier. But I meant to know.
How many childhoods did you have, Howard?
Well, I'm still a 71-year-old kid now. I mean, I'm still jumping around. I could still, play catch if I had to. I was a very fast runner in high school. They wanted me to go off for the track team, but nah, no way. Anyway, that's my story. I couldn't speak as eloquently as some of the others here tonight, but I did want to mention a Bronx kid who just really loved the guy from Manhattan, and then later on San Francisco. So thank you very much for listening.
Howard, you were terrific. Robert
Thank you.
Schindler, you are up. Robert?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. This is encouraging. Thank you so much, Gary. You've added to my life. And all of you for keeping this flame alive. Willie Mays. What did Willie Mays mean to me? They called me Say since I was 12. 30 BFFs called me Say, and suddenly I could play center field. No talent, all heart. But I was convinced I could be Willie Mays, and my BFFs believed me. And what does Willie Mays mean to me? My bar mitzvah was baseball, and Willie Mays sent me a telegram. 30 BFFs were in awe. What does Willie Mays mean to me? In the Babe Ruth League, I came up one time and heard my 35-year-old cousin screaming, "Hit that ball, Willie." What does Willie Mays mean to me? I wear this San Francisco Giant hat that I had on my head as I listened to the game that Willie Mays breaks my father's hero.
Don't even come up for air.
I'm listening to these
I
people.
don't really care.
I didn't want to be
You don't
on.
even talk to me.
I am.
I'm a nobody.
Excuse me.
I don't even like you in my life. You're a wonderful personality. Nothing. No.
I hope we're done.
Am I up?
Yes, you are.
Okay. What does Willie Mays mean to me? I wear this hat, the San Francisco Giant hat that I had on my head as I listened to the game that Willie Mays breaks my father's heroes record, Mel Ott, for the National League home runs. What does Willie Mays mean to me? I saw every game the Giants played at Shea Stadium with the Mets from 1964 to 1973. What did Willie Mays mean to me? Well, when it's announced, 20 phone calls immediately happen. I talk until 3 a.m. Everyone regaling our childhood and the discussion of 1964, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle. A woman I dated in 1971 texts me. A child that I know since 1953 texts me. What did Willie Mays mean to me? I trained myself at age 12 to get up at 4 a.m. to get the ball scores from the coast. And in 1965, to pray that Willie Mays had hit one. I practiced his stance. I got his bat and mitt. I worked on the basket catch for hours. And over, I tried to recreate not only the catch, but the throw I read about from 1951. They can't be recreated. Not by me, not in a dream, and not by all of the best players ever made. What did Willie Mays mean to me? Every time we played, I played center field. I played shallow like Willie. And when a ball was hit over my head, I heard them scream, and there goes Willie. What does Willie Mays mean to me? I helped to raise 9 children, and they all know that when I said to decide an argument, pick a number from 1 to 10. And they all screamed 24, because 24 was always the right number. All my friends and emails end in 7, but all Giant fans end in 24. What does Willie Mays mean to me? In 2010, at Game 5, a news guy sees me in my New York Giants McGraw outfit. And I went into my tirade. If we win the thing I'm not allowed to speak of, it belongs on the finger of the statue of Willie Mays, the man who got us here. And I'm quoted in the Wall Street Journal. What does Willie Mays mean to me? I always say I can have a good day and left, go 2 for 3, drive in a run. But I look to center field, see my wife, Jolene, and realize Willie does that every day. What does Willie Mays mean to me? My BFF Kevin, a lifetime Cub fan who knows way more about baseball than I could ever hope to know. He said on my tombstone, they just need to say, I saw Willie play. Nothing else needs to be said. What does Willie Mays mean to me? I am successful because of him. I have a great family life because of him. I have friends because of Willie Mays. I have children that love me because of Willie Mays. What does Willie Mays mean to me? I simply cried out loud when he passed. And it's clear I was grieving. A piece of me is torn out. I saw many of the greats, Roberto, the Mick, Yogi, Hank, Sandy, Don, Mac, Juan, Gaylord, but Willie was different. What does Willie Mays mean to me? I saw Willie play, and he was the best there ever was. Thank you, guys.
Robert, that was wonderful. We're going to go to Howard W.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone. I hope I'm not breaking the rule. I'm just going to mention, I'll be quick, because I remember he taught me something about knowledge and modesty in one of his greatest moments. And that was when he hit number 512 to break the National League record held by Mel Ott. And after the game, I think it was Russ Hodges, but it might have been Lon Simmons interviewing him. And he asked him, he said, do you think anybody can break your record, meaning the National League record? And I, at the time, thought, no, nobody's going to break this record. And Willie's going to even threaten Babe Ruth's record. And Willie Mays said, I don't know, but watch this guy, Hank Aaron. At the time, Eddie Matthews of the Braves was ahead of Hank Aaron. And it actually kind of hurt me to hear him say that, because I didn't want that record ever broken. But I will appreciate the fact that, you know, as a kid at the time, when your heroes tell you something like that, it's a good lesson. And so it was both knowledge, because he did predict very correctly the man who was going to break his record, and then Babe Ruth. And he did say so very modestly and dispassionately. So as a little kid at the time, it was important for me to get that lesson. Thank you.
That was great, Howard. All right, get the tissues ready. Renee. I'm sorry, I love you, Renee.
All these Willie Mays that we've had for the last couple years, month, the 24, everything we've done to talk about, to exchange stories. When I was a kid, I heard I didn't see the New York Giants. I heard stories. And like a few had mentioned, you hear stories about Willie Mays. As you get older, start looking for him in the papers, find out some books, magazines on him. Like Gary and everybody else from New York, trying to follow him. It's amazing how many people in this group and every group I've ever met, there's a similarity to us all, which is unbelievable. I'm a big sports fan, big baseball fan. So moments, whether I watched it, heard it, saw it, or there at the park, or with a group of people at an unusual spot, somebody listening to the radio. Those moments I cherish a lot, because whether I was there or not, I was a part of it in some small way. So when Willie came back to New York, listen, I tried watching him when Giants came to New York and play. You find out all these accolades he got when he was as a New York Giant, as a San Francisco Giant. He's so beloved in baseball. I don't think anybody has a bad thing for Willie Mays. Every time fans come, players come to the ball, whether it's Candlestick or Oracle Park, I hear stories all players want to talk about. He's in the park. Everybody wants to talk. One of my big dreams years ago at an All-Star game is I want to be in that when I forgot what year the All-Star game, but I would love to be in the clubhouse listening to stories, and Willie Mays is there. Stories is everything I live for with this group, the other group, everything else. The cheers I hear when there's a great moment and we all relish in the moment, it's Willie Mays. His greatest gift to not only New York, but San Francisco is that whether he really realized it or not, he shared something on both coasts. His cheers show me how much he's so beloved. I've said recently that he is simply the GOAT. And what he means to me is his love of the game. The fans and the players and everybody outside of the game who love this guy, who are not even fans, who know this guy and hear stories about it. what he means to me is because he brings the love of the game and what he brings to himself. I thank you.
Renee, that was fabulous, Renee. Great job. Welcome back, Ken Kelly. Ken Kelly, you are up.
Well, I'm sorry I had to go away. I had a guy come talk to me about putting solar panels on the house here. You know, in Texas, we can use that sun and help our electric bill, I guess. So that's where I went. I guess being from the home state of Willie Mays, knowing that he was born in Westfield and grew up in Fairfield and played for the Birmingham Black Barons in '48, helped them to their championship season in '48, and then signing with New York, and being able just to watch him. Never got to meet the gentleman, but being able to watch him play on those Saturday afternoons with Kurt Gowdy, you know, the game of the week that they had on Saturdays, seeing him play. I can't tell you probably how many rookie cards I put in my bicycle spokes to make that engine sound, you know. But I guess me being at the game last week before last, on Tuesday night, and I was there with Art Black and Joe and a couple other guys sitting there, and then the seventh inning comes on, and the announcer comes on and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share some sad news with you." And the first thing that popped up to my head was Willie Mays passed away, even before he said it. And sure enough, he came on, and I think if y'all can probably go to YouTube and see the hour and 36-minute video of how the stands reacted. But it was like, it was just silent. I mean, the whole place just went silent. And I'm quite sure that the video that they showed at that point was a video that they were going to show during the Major League game between San Francisco and St. Louis that Thursday night. But since that happened, they went ahead and showed that video. And the next thing you know, you can see video of people, they're panning the stadium. I mean, there's tears coming down people's eyes. Most of the people I saw, like myself, we were wearing baseball caps. We took our caps off in reverence to him. And then after the video was over, you just all of a sudden started hearing everybody standing up and clapping. And then you heard the crowd started chanting, "Willie, Willie, Willie." And it was just a surreal moment that will be with me for the rest of my life, because I knew where I was in the place where he got his start at age 17, playing right field for the Birmingham Barons. And it was just one of those moments that will live with you forever. And just to see the acknowledgement of the 78 to 7,900 fans that were there give the tribute that they did to him was just amazing. And so I went out there, and of course they had the big 8-foot four-sided section photos and stuff of 8 or 9 of the Negro League people that were there that they were honoring for the league. And Willie Mays happened to have, you know, his was out there. And of course I took his, plus also took all the others. But the other neat thing was that Louisville Slugger was there, and they had one of Willie Mays's bats that they actually let you hold. So I held Willie Mays's bat, and one of my idols growing up, based on the number that I wore, 21, all through my high school and college career, for Roberto Clemente. So I got to hold Willie Mays's bat, one of his bats he used, that's at the Louisville Slugger Museum, and also Roberto Clemente. So that will be with me, and I'm quite sure with Art and with Jimmy and with Joe, who was with me, for the rest of our lives. And that's, I guess, my sharing of what it meant to be at that place at that particular time. And I got to thinking, after all of that was done, about the 8th inning, I got to thinking that I said, you know something? It came full circle for him. He started at Rickwood Field, went to New York, went to San Francisco, and now he had been waiting for this moment for this to happen back at Rickwood Field. And as if he was saying to us, now I'm at peace, I can go. Does that make sense? And to me, that's what it made it seem so surreal, that he was happy being able to see. And I'm hoping that he got to see the opening of that Tuesday night. And Michael Mays, his son, was at the game Tuesday night, so of course, he had to fly back after the news was mentioned. But I just think Willie was waiting for it to come full circle, and it did that Tuesday night, June the 18th of 2024. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Ken. Ken, I will work on the guests you spoke about with the book, okay?
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I've got yours. I'll get with you and I'll let you know when I've got it and ship it to you.
No rush, man. Everybody's spoken. Mr. Rothschild, why don't you wrap it up for the evening?
You know, I wasn't going to speak because there's just so much, and I didn't expect it to be like it was this evening. But Gary, it's a lot of memories. People told stories, which, you know, I don't. That was part of the theme, but it all fit. Norm's presentation and Rick Swig, the letter that you read, that he wrote for Orlando Cepeda, kind of reminds me of one thing. I'm not sure, Rick, if you even know this. The guys that were in New York, the second trophy, 2013, when Peter McGowan was speaking, and Willie Mays was a lifetime employee of the Giants, and he asked Peter McGowan for one more year. And Peter McGowan said, I don't understand, Willie. You're a lifetime employee. What's with the one more year? And Willie Mays said, I need May to have another year when I pass to put everything in order. I mean, just the thought of that, you know, you cringe when you hear that kind of story, and very similar to the letter that he wrote to Orlando. You know, it came across the screen, and nobody was ready for it. And this was like somebody mentioned, Peter Pan. He was never going to pass away. I mean, I go back to my first time seeing him. My two uncles took me to a game, and at the Polo Grounds, I was a young kid in elementary school. It was a day game, and I still remember them telling me, like Bob Costas, his father, watch that guy there, watch that number 24. He's something special. And that stood all these years. I had the opportunity to meet him a couple of times, but the one time, and I want to share this story, the one time, you talk about coincidences. I owned a day camp in Rockland County from the late 70s to the early 90s. I lived in Riverdale. I lived only 3 blocks from where Willie Mays lived. He lived in the Whitehall, which was a building overlooking the Henry Hudson Parkway. He lived in a penthouse. And in June, when I went to school, and my school was only about 4 miles from where I lived, I would always take camp applications, camp medical forms. And my wife knew if somebody called the house late on, let me know. Now, if I have to make a delivery, I will. Well, it's a Friday in June. It was pouring rain. We had a softball team at my elementary school. And it was kind of like, I used to make it dress down day. I had my sweatpants on, and I had an old Willie Mays t-shirt. Okay, that was my dress for that day. The game was rained out because it was pouring. I worked after school in what they call the latchkey program, so I didn't get out of school till 6 o'clock. At about noon, my wife calls, and Stephen, we got a call from someone. They want to send their son to camp. Her name is Hall. Okay, Janice, did she tell you where she lives? Yeah, she lives in the Whitehall. Okay, call her back and tell her I'm in school till 6 o'clock. I'll deliver an application and make sure she knows she has to have a medical form in before camp starts. This was about 10 days before camp. Okay, school's over 6 o'clock. I drive up the Henry Hudson Parkway. It's still pouring rain. Park my car. I walk to the building, having no idea what's going to transpire. I go into the doorman building. The doorman says, "Can I help you, sir?" I said, "Yes, I'm looking for Mrs. Hall." "Who might I say is calling?" I said, "Just tell her it's Steve, the guy from the day camp." Goes on the phone. He says to me, "Okay, just take the elevator up to the penthouse floor. She'll be waiting for you." Well, Rothschild's starting to think now. He lives here. He's got to be right there. The elevator door opens up. She's outside the door. African-American lady. looks at my shirt. Oh, I see you're a big Willie. I see you're a Willie Mays fan. I said, I'm a big Willie Mays fan. Would you like to meet him? I said, I'll tell you what, let's forget about camp and let's meet Willie Mays. No, please come in. So I meet the little boy, he's 11 years old, Mark Hall. And it turns out the Halls were their best friends. May was friendly with Mrs. Hall, and Willie was friendly with Mr. Hall. They owned Hall's Chickens, which doesn't mean anything. So I'm talking to the boy, but I'm listening to her on the phone. She's obviously on the phone with Willie Mays. So we finish. She gives me a deposit. I give her a medical form, tell her she's got to have this in before camp. She can call me. I'll come pick it up, blah, blah, blah. I open the door and leave. There he is, big as life. This was like a rare moment. I mean, I was young enough to be like a kid in a candy store. Come on in. I guess you want an autograph. I said, yes, I'd like an autograph. I shook his hand. They were as big as meat cleavers. And he signs a picture for me, and I take it, and I said, you look like you could still play. He says, no, that's all behind me now. Okay, I take the picture, I take the application, my book bag, and it turns out that he's the godfather of Mark Hall. Back in the elevator, start driving the elevator down. You idiot. Why didn't you at least ask him? Maybe he wants to come up to camp, see his godson play. Not that he would have. Naturally, I had this photo laminated. The moral of the story is when I get home, I park my car, I go upstairs, open up my apartment door. Janice is waiting. How did it go? I said, Janice, I was just in bed with Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and Victoria Principal. What the hell are you talking about? I was just in Willie Mays' apartment. That's just one of many stories. I don't want to bore you with others. They got better as we went along, but obviously he's going to be missed. Not only was he a terrific ball player, he was a wonderful guy. You guys have all said what he did for kids. He's never going to die in our eyes. We're going to always talk about him. And like Gary said, the month of May is going to come back next year, but there is a void, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to end it with two things. All those trophy tours, when Willie walked in, he was no longer a young man. But today, for some reason, I was thinking Willie, I think, was 5'11" and weighed roughly 180 when he played. And he walks in, and I'm thinking today, I'm 5'11", maybe 25 pounds heavier. Yet this man's stature was so much larger than mine. It was really, he didn't look like me. I know he was still kind of ripped, but I mean, he was a godly figure. That's one thing. And he lived to 93, and I know people are crying and sad, and I get that. But when I think of Willie Mays, I smile because of all the happiness and joy he gave to all of you guys. And he gave to me, and he gave me a link to my father. And Rick was impassioned with what he was saying. But Rick knew him personally and loved the man. And we all love the man in our own way. Some of us closer to him than others, but he is not, he's never going to die in our hearts. Willie Mays lives on forever, and this group will always remember him because the group basically is founded because of him. We're all Giant fans. Why? Because of Willie Mays. That's why. We salute you, Willie. Rest in peace, and we'll see everybody on the 11th. I'm going to shut off the recording if anybody wants to talk a little bit more. It's a great meeting. Thank you all for participating, and have a wonderful 4th of July. Be good, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.